Welcome in everyone to a new episode of Let's Talk Lenawee by Visit Lenawee. And this one, we're kicking off 2024 with a bang here. We're on the campus of Adrian College in Dawson Auditorium. And we're with Adrian Symphony Orchestra Music Director Bruce Kiesling. Hi, Bruce.
Hey, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for having us here. We're on stage where you guys perform throughout the year. So we're excited to be on site. Robert's going to be throwing in some B-roll for you guys to show you some past performances and as we talk through here today. But lots to get into. I know we're more than halfway through this year's season, but there's still 4 shows left. So let's get into those and talk about the show coming up this Friday.
Absolutely. We are really on the cusp of our season because we do 7. So there is a middle show, and that is this week on Friday night. February 16th, we'll have our annual film night. So every February, we've been doing a show that's a salute to great movie music, and we tend to have a theme. We've had a lot of great success with Star Wars themes in the past. And this week, we have a Harry Potter theme. So we have lots of those great music that we associate with those 8 fantastic Harry Potter films. Okay. And probably the most famous film composer today living is certainly John Williams. He, other than Walt Disney, he is the most nominated man for an Oscar in any category. Really? And if he just gets nominated a couple more times, he will break that record. It's well into the 50s, like more than 50 nominations. And he wrote most of the famous music that we associate not only with Harry Potter, but with so many famous films like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and E.T. and Home Alone. I mean, the list goes on and on. But although other composers came in and worked on some of the other films, they all used some of John Williams' music, that famous Hedwig's theme that opens every one of the movies. Right. That's John Williams, and like those movies, we'll be including that as one of the first things that we play on our concert as well to kick things off. That's
so exciting. And everyone is encouraged to dress up when they come to the show too, right? This is a very family-friendly piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are really 2 concerts during our season, which we really try to make sure that are really welcoming to families. And one of those is our holiday concert, which we do every December. And we have performers of all ages, shapes, colors, everything, in musical styles, as you can imagine, for holiday. And but this concert as well, we really want to make sure that in the middle of winter here, when everything is dark and such short days, that we have a chance to celebrate some great music and to, as you said, make it really family friendly. And so part of that is we start the concert early. So this is a 7 p.m. start on Friday night, which is the earliest of our evening programs. And that way things are wrapped up well before 9. It's a relatively short program. And also we do, as you said, a costume contest, which has proven to be one of the most popular things. But we have children of all ages who dress up for this. So several dozen of the audience members will get involved, and they get dressed up. Some of the costumes are amazing. We were just talking about last year, we had somebody dressed up as Marty McFly and various characters. Indiana Jones, we've had lots of Star Wars characters over the years. But for this one, obviously, we'll have a lot of Hogwarts students. And we did a similar theme several seasons ago, and we had one little kid dressed up as Hedwig, the little bird, and it was one of the most fantastic costumes we've ever seen. So we're really looking forward to seeing who we have this year and who people dress up as. And we do a little contest where we let the audience kind of applaud and choose their favorites. And we'll have 2 categories for youth and for adults, and a little prize for each of them. So it's really, I always say, is it a car this year? They're like, no, Bruce, it's not a car.
We'll have to get
I'm like, well, that's right, for next year, a cruise, some big trip or something. But definitely, it's a really fun part of the program, along with all the great music. And one of the things that I try to do is make sure that we don't just play it, but we sort of talk about where it comes from in the film and why it so illustrates that particular moment, or why it resonates with people. And on this program, like I said, lots of Harry Potter, but we also mix in some other favorites by John Williams and some of the stuff that he also wrote that people may not know that he wrote. I like to surprise people a little bit here and there, or when he quotes maybe some classical music. And with the Super Bowl that just happened this past weekend, we're going to be doing music that John Williams wrote, which is the Monday Night Football theme. And most people don't know that he wrote that. That's awesome. So that'll be a nice part of the program. Because again, like some of those surprises.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Are you dressing up?
I dress up in my work outfit, of course, so I'm already dressed up in my black concert black.
Right.
For these programs, we're a little more casual, so we don't wear tuxedos. And I like a relatively informal approach. So in general, our orchestra wears all black, but not tuxedos for most of our programs.
Right.
I like something that's just a little more casual, but still professional looking. So we just go with all black usually. So I'll be dressed as that.
Okay.
But we have had some dressed up guest conductors. Darth Vader actually came out and conducted a piece one time. And so you just never know what you're going to see.
You don't. People love also just your commentary, and like you said, you kind of give some history for people who don't know. I mean, you're coming, like myself, I started coming to a couple shows last year with my mom, and then I came for the Christmas one this past December. I brought my 3-year-old too, which, by the way, very family friendly. I didn't know how that would go with a 3-year-old here, and I'm like, you know, if we make it through the whole concert, cool. If we don't, you know, we'll see how long he lasts. No, he sat there the entire time. He was so entranced. He loved it. So I do really recommend, if you have kids, to bring them for the family, you know, one of the more family friendly type of shows, because they're really great.
And we tend to do lots of short pieces too, so it's not like you have to sit there for 15 minutes. In general, all the pieces on both December and this week, they're relatively short programs, or relatively short pieces, so that every 3 or 4 minutes you get to clap and move around, just kind of break the tension, for sure.
But getting back into it for this weekend, there are still some tickets available online. Super popular show, so they're pretty scarce. So if you still want to check it out, definitely go to adriansymphony.org, get some tickets. We'll talk about ticket prices and stuff later. We got a lot to zoom through today. But
sure. This is one of our best-selling programs year in and year out, and it's become one of our most popular. But we definitely have some tickets still available. But if you want good seats, we always say, well, if you want better seats, you want to get in there soon. Yeah, it's really it's a great, great evening and a really fun program.
Definitely fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be here. So
Great.
I don't know if I'll dress up. We'll see.
I look forward to it, yeah.
So March is Pulcinella.
Yeah, Pulcinella. It's Italian, so we say it with a little bit of a ch sound. And yeah, that's basically an Italian character. And so lots of people in Italy, they would know this character because it's kind of it's a character that would occur in plays and operas and musicals and films, and sort of this sad court jester who never gets the girl. He's always in love with the pretty girl, but you're like, that guy's not going to get it. And so that sort of like wah, wah quality, that's one of the pieces that we're doing as part of the whole season, which is our festival celebrating the music of Stravinsky. And Stravinsky is the most important, really, composer in the world in the 20th century. His music really influenced everybody who follows him. You know, we talk a lot in our field about Beethoven, because when Beethoven was alive 100 years before Stravinsky, every single composer who wrote after him was aware of him, and whether you loved him or hated him, you were influenced by it, because you either tried to imitate him or you tried to like rebel against that. And the same thing is true of Stravinsky as well, and that's why we've done one of the major ballets from Stravinsky on all of our programs this season. And so that, for our March, we have a Pulcinella, and we're pairing that too with another great composer, which is of course Mozart. If we talk about famous names, I think everybody's like, well, Mozart, he's that sort of boy genius. Yeah, absolutely. And so on this program, we have a really great symphony. It's actually the very last symphony that he wrote. And Mozart died very young. You know, there's a famous movie about Mozart when he got very sick when he was like 38 years old or something, and passed away. And you just think this genius was really just hitting his stride. And the part I think is great about Mozart's story is, you know, he was this really kind of this boy genius, so really a prodigy as a kid, but not in a way that people really took him seriously. It was more sort of like a performing dog or something. Look at this kid doing these tricks. He's got this incredible ear, and he's written all this music, and it's sort of like a Shirley Temple quality, because like, oh, so cute, look at him doing all his musical like mastery. But he had a really hard time transitioning to be taken seriously as an adult. So much like an actor who maybe had all this success as like the cute kid, and then maybe when they try to transition into adulthood and say, I want to be a serious actress now, in Mozart's case, he really wanted to be taken seriously and struggled, because people were like, well, that's Mozart. He was that kid. Yeah, they were used to him being the cute kid. They weren't ready for that. And right at the end of his life, that's when that really started to change. And people started to say in those last couple of symphonies, oh, wow, maybe there is something here. And then he passed away. And in fact, the piece we're playing, he never heard during his lifetime. He wrote it, but then didn't get a chance to actually hear it played before he passed away. And it's just a magnificent work. It's very, very joyous and happy and full of all this optimism. And that's one of the things you're like so tragic. So some people you're like, oh, their last work, like Tchaikovsky, his last work, you just want to die. It's so sad. But in this one, it's so joyous and happy. And so it's a totally different take on that. And that's what we're pairing up with that piece by Pulcinella, or that Pulcinella piece by Stravinsky.
Awesome. That sounds like a really exciting show.
It should be too, yeah.
So after that, we have Rite of Spring.
Absolutely. This is the one we've really been gearing the whole season toward, the Rite of Spring, which is May 2nd on Friday evening. And we cannot wait for this because really this is the piece that changed music history. So in terms of everybody who wrote music after this, they couldn't help but be influenced. Either you thought it was the greatest thing written in music history, or you thought it was terrible. In fact, there are great stories about the world premiere of this piece in Paris. And about 1912 or 1913, when the piece was premiered, literally a riot broke out because some people were like booing in the audience because they thought this is not how music is supposed to sound, because it's not all pretty and polished in that way that Mozart would have been, 100 years earlier. Yeah, and this was like kind of angular and like very percussive music, just kind of driven by rhythm and just this kind of endless percussive drive. I often say that this piece led the way to rock and roll, this idea of like a drum beat that follows right through it, because it was primarily driven by this like rhythmic energy that just never stopped. And some people in the audience, some of those like really old-fashioned people, were not ready for that. And so they started booing, which was quite common. And then other people stood up and they were like, shut up, I can't hear the music. So they started fighting, yelling back and forth, and eventually a fight. The people said chairs were thrown, and they spilled out onto the streets of it, and like dozens and dozens of people out there. They had to call the police to kind of break things up. And so this is one of the only riots in classical music, but we're hoping that things will be a little calmer.
No throwing chairs.
Exactly, no throwing chairs at this show. But we do hope that prepare the audience for what they're expecting, and certainly it's a great tour de force for the orchestra. It really shows off these incredible musicians that we have.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's exciting too. And then kind of leading into the rock and roll piece, that's where you end the season this year, right? With Heartache Tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the things we try to do is end our entire season. We tend to run like the school year. So from October till May is pretty much our normal season. And we always try to end that with a program that includes more contemporary music, whether that's from 50s, 60s, 70s, or even getting into the 80s now. And this year we're doing that with a concert that's a tribute band celebrating the Eagles. And so we're calling it Heartache Tonight. This is a really just magnificent program. And it's one of those bands that you're like, oh, what did they sing? Oh, yeah, they did a Heartache Tonight. Oh, they did Desperado. Oh, they did Hotel California. I mean, the list goes on, and you're like, oh, I love that. Oh, and that song too. And so we think that our audience is really going to love it. It's another one of our most popular programs, especially as we kind of hand off to the summer. We do a bunch of activities out in front of the theater, weather permitting, where we have a little reception out there before we come in for the concert. And it's usually one of our audience's most favorite programs of the year. So that one's very different than Rite of Spring and Stravinsky. We'll have closed the book on Stravinsky for the season. And then in that June program, we do a Heartache Tonight this year. So it should be a lot of fun.
Fun piece to end the season off with. Yeah, I like that. My mom usually gets season tickets, and I usually try to get her.
Oh, her June ones, yes. Definitely.
It's a good show. So I want to talk about the performers that are actually in the Adrian Symphony Orchestra, because you bring in performers from Ohio and all over Michigan. So talk about the caliber of performers that are in the orchestra, and just maybe a little bit of history on the musicians themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. We're incredibly lucky here, because a lot of people say, oh, well, Adrian, we're a smaller town, we're a smaller market. But in a lot of ways, in terms of music, we're ideally located, because we're so conveniently located between Lansing, Ann Arbor, Detroit, and Toledo. And so we're able to draw our musician base from that, which is a really rich area of great professional musicians. So all of the musicians in the Adrian Symphony are all professionals. They're all paid, and they come together and put our concerts together in record time. Just in 1 week, usually 2 to 4 rehearsals, depending. So some of our lighter programs we just do in 2 quick rehearsals, like this week with the film concert, and maybe our holiday program we do in 2. But our most difficult programs, like Rite of Spring, we'll do in 4 rehearsals. But still, our musicians are so talented. They come ready to play, having like learned all of their music. So it's just kind of putting it together and making sure we're all on the same page. And very much as a conductor, my job is to kind of be that overall guide, to listen up here in front. I always say I have the best seat in the house because I get to hear all of our great musicians, but also to be the one who's just making sure, oh, is this loud enough? Is that too loud? So that we balance things across the orchestra. And this sort of an artistic guide of like, hey, well, what's the big picture here? What's the color we're going for? What do we want the audience to feel during these moments? And that's what we're really going for in the rehearsal process. But as I said, we're so lucky to have these wonderful musicians who have, you know, master's degrees, doctoral degrees in music. Many of them teach full-time during the day. They teach music at universities or teach privately. And some of them have like regular 9-to-5 jobs, but kind of they were wonderful on their instrument and they still want that creative outlet, and they keep their technical and chops up to the level where they can continue to play in professional orchestras. And you'll see some of our players like playing in Toledo, playing in Detroit, playing in Saginaw, and Ann Arbor, and so they'll play with us for a week, and then maybe the next week they'll be in Dearborn, the next week they'll be in Lansing, and so it's a really wonderfully rich source of musicians, and definitely every note that we hear here just sounds really great because of the artistry they bring to it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's like you said, the feelings is what, when you come here and listen to an orchestra playing, especially here, I haven't been to others, so maybe I'm a little biased, but you really do get that feeling of, you are. You really get that feeling of, you know, the music that's coming off, and just you're just so soaked in it, and before you know it, the show's over and you're like, wait, I want more.
Well, I'm so glad you feel that way, because that's very much what we try to do, is really touch people emotionally through music. Not just, I always say, like, nobody goes to a concert to hear a chord played in tune. They go to hear and feel something. And so our best moments, I think, are when we're doing music that's programmatic, that has a storyline attached to it, and we can really take people through this emotional journey. And I think that beautifully played music really connects to us in a way that's not just through our ears, but really through our hearts and our soul. And I think that that's what we've seen as our audience continues to grow. We've been really pleased with ticket sales since COVID. We're definitely back to pre-COVID numbers, and we're so happy with that. And we know that our audience is enjoying the work, as I said, of our wonderful musicians.
Absolutely. And a lot of times you kind of even describe the Adrian Symphony Orchestra as, you know, small town, but like a big city feel when you come to these shows.
Well, I think it's really special that this community has supported a professional orchestra now, you know, coming up on 40 years or whatever the history is, but it really goes deep in a really special way. And that's not just because of who's here today in our audience and on our board and in our leadership, but it's about who has been here over the course of that 40 years to really be deciding a priority for the community is to have a professional orchestra. And I think that's a wonderful calling card for Adrian, for Lenawee County as a whole, that they do have a professional orchestra and that it plays at the level that it does here. Because so many people come in and they say, oh, well, I used to live in this larger town. I used to live in Nashville. I used to live in Charlotte. I used to live somewhere, and I came to here for a job at the university or in Ann Arbor or somewhere, and I moved here and I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to hear great music. And then they come to our concert and they're like, I was blown away. I can't believe here in our smaller but wonderful community, we still have this incredible cultural resource of the Adrian Symphony, which is really special. I felt that way when I first came to town and visited. I was like, wow, this orchestra is so fantastic.
Yeah, lots of support behind it, definitely. And led by a wonderful director. People love you when they come to the shows. I mean, it just feels different too. Like, you really do, you're animated up here, and you make it fun.
Well, I always love the stories behind the music, and I love the music personally. I figure part of my job is to help you love it in that same way, to share what I love about it, and hopefully to help you to love it as well. And as I said, I love the stories. I love a little gossip and behind the performers and the composers, because I think it helps to bring it to life. Because this were written by real people, and sometimes I think we lose sight of that because we are in danger as a field of kind of becoming a museum. Like, oh, well, this was great music from 300 years ago, and they're like, no, this is great music, period. And we don't play it just just because it was once great. We play it because it's still great, and we have to find that as performers, but also we have to communicate that to the audience. And I figure that is our charge. That's our job, to bring it to life. And as you said, it makes you feel something. We hope when we're at our best that's the thing that makes people want to come back, and they say, wow, I can't get that anywhere else. And as much as we have Spotify and YouTube and all these wonderful resources to hear the best orchestras in the world, without question, and music in all genres, I'll say too, but also there's something about hearing music live and in the room with you, which I still think is a greater experience. And to hear it with a group of people sitting in this room who are all enjoying it together. Like when we go to a movie, you know, we could all watch movies at home and never go out if we wanted to, but there's still something exciting about, oh, this new movie just came out, we want to go see it in the theater. That's that special, that experience of doing it in a group. And I think so much of like hearing great music played by wonderful musicians in a wonderful hall. And certainly here in Dawson Auditorium, we have wonderful acoustics here, and our musicians and my own family who have come to concerts here, they often say, wow, the orchestra sounds like so close to you, no matter where you're sitting. We're really lucky to have the acoustics that this room has. And our orchestra notices that too, because they play, as we said, they're playing all the time in different cities and different places, and they hear different acoustics, some wonderful, some terrible, but they've really raved about how they can hear each other in this room, so they can hear across the orchestra, and as well as our audience can hear them. And so we consider that one of our greatest strengths too. The acoustics in this room are really great.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, no, everything, exactly, everything matters, you know.
Bruce, you've directed at some really famous music halls too. So we're lucky to have you in our community. But tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up with the ASO.
Well, I grew up in Ohio, but I went to high school in Brighton, Michigan, so not too far from here. And my father worked for the auto industry with Ford Motor Company, so we moved up here when I was in high school, and I attended the University of Michigan nearby. In fact, my first time in Adrian, I was an audition pianist for when they did West Side Story at the Croswell. So I came down here on a very rainy night one fall and played some auditions for that, and that was my first experience in Adrian. But certainly I was primarily a pianist in school, and a teacher suggested I do a conducting class. And I remember my teacher, who was very influential in my career, he asked right after I conducted some tiny little thing, like the first day, he said, oh, are you a string player? Because he said, you just have a natural sense of line. When I sort of wave my arms around, you know, flailing it around, and I knew nothing then and everything, but he said, you know, he could see that there was something there, just like a little kernel of some idea. And luckily enough, I had some wonderful faculty in a variety of areas at the university there. Did some graduate work also at Michigan and then in Florida. And my first job was in North Carolina, where I spent 8 years before relocating to California, where I live now. But when I saw the posting for this job now almost 9 years ago, I was like, wow, well, the chance to go back to the Ann Arbor, Detroit area, which I loved this part of the country for sure. And so I was really pleased to see the posting, and even more so because it's a very competitive field. There's, you know, dozens and dozens of applicants, well over 100 for most jobs that come out. So to kind of just be noticed in that can be a real challenge, and so I consider myself very lucky to even have the chance to audition here, and even more so when I was offered the position. This is my 8th year here. Yeah, it goes fast for sure, but it's really been a wonderful period of growth for me personally, for the orchestra, for our community, I think, and they continue to be very proud of the orchestra.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for all that you've done for the orchestra over the last 8 years. I know there's been a lot of growth for ticket sales and just all around attendance. So again, we're lucky to have you.
Well, thank you. You're so kind. Like I really consider myself lucky to have the job and to have a community that, as I said, really supports the orchestra and has done so for decades, so that it's still a thriving institution here. It's really quite a gem for a town of our size to have an orchestra of this quality, fully professional, that performs, you know, 6 or 7 times a year. That's really great.
So as a visitor, like you mentioned, you travel, you know, back from where you live in California here to, you know, for when there's a show for a week. From a visitor's perspective, like what makes this city special to come back to? I mean, you've been here for 8 years and you spent a lot of time here. So just even outside of the orchestra, like, you know, our goal is to bring in visitors from outside of the county to come in and experience things like the ASO and some of our other attractions in the county. So What are some of your favorite places to go to, or what do you enjoy when you're in town?
Well, there's obviously a lot of natural beauty here, certainly. So I love the kind of semi-rural feel of right outside town. And usually when I'm here, I stay at Devil's Lake, which is so beautiful out there. Then the natural lakes, as in California where there's almost no water, it's wonderful. There's so much water around here for sure.
Lots, yes.
And that's a real treat. And Hidden Lake Gardens, we've been there several times and visited, and that's lovely for sure. But also just downtown. Downtown Adrian is really this thriving sort of mecca of businesses. And even in the 8 years that I've been coming here, approximately 1 week a month I'm here, and I've seen so much growth and rebirth in downtown. And we were talking earlier, I remember, and it was probably starting when I first got here. There was lots of construction on that main sort of corner, and now all that's done, and there's wonderful restaurants and just more and more businesses popping up there. And I just think it's been so exciting to be here at the time when we're really seeing this return of downtown Adrian, the Croswell Theater. There's so much history there, great restaurants too, where I always look forward to. I was dining at a local restaurant last night downtown, and that's wonderful as well. But also, WLEN, there's just wonderful community here, and for me, it's the people that I enjoy spending time with. Not only talking about the work that we do here with the symphony, but just it's a wonderful group of family-oriented community, and I love that about it. The Christmas tree thing, when they set the record and then lost it and then got it back again. Like, there's really a can-do spirit here, which I think is really special.
Again, small city doing big things.
Exactly.
But we have so much in our backyard, so we're really grateful for that. But thank you so much for being on with us. We really hope people come check it out, even if it's not this season, but next season. When typically do you announce for the 24-25?
Yeah, so we'll announce all of that by our last concert, which is May 2nd. So in April-ish, we'll announce all the details of our next season, which we're really excited about. This year was all Stravinsky, and so next year we're going to sort of turn the page, but we have a really exciting theme that I think it's going to be great, but I think what's going to really resonate here in Adrian especially.
Do you want to give us any hints?
I can't.
Okay, I tried. Sorry, guys. Where can people get tickets again, and maybe talk a little bit? I mean, the prices are very affordable, but there's also options to get season long, or you can pick a few too.
Absolutely. Like, no matter what your price range is, chances are we have a ticket for you based on where it is in the hall and how things, depending on how many tickets are sold and where you want to sit, et cetera. But it's very affordable for what we offer, and to have professional musicians here on stage playing some of the greatest music in history. I think most people in our audience would agree it's a wonderful deal. Absolutely. And they can get tickets primarily at our website, adriansymphony.org, and there you can find out all about our programs that we have going on. You can also call our box office at 264-3121, and those are great ways to find out more about our programs, those upcoming 4 concerts we've talked about, but also the season announcement. Once that comes out, that'll be on the website as well. So it's a great way to find out what's going on and some of the details, like whether there's a costume contest, whether there's a pre-concert talk, whether there are events out in the lobby that people can take part in. So definitely our website is the place to find out all of that, and social media at Instagram and Facebook, et cetera.
All right. And just that story, like you said, even about each concert, that's on the website. And then I know there's a Spotify playlist too, so you can kind of get ready for them beforehand.
Well, yeah, some people like to listen in advance, so we try to put together a little Spotify playlist and be like, what are they going to play on this? Do I want to hear this? You can go listen to hear snippets of the pieces, and so you get a little preview, if you will. And then, as I said, I usually introduce each piece from the stage, and a little bit about, I always like have a nice little tidbit of information, just so, again, to kind of put some context into, and so people know what they're expecting to hear. So you'll be like, hey, when you hear this part, it's almost over. Sometimes that can be a good thing to know. It's like, oh, he said when we hear the bass drum, it's almost done. Or something to, just something to hang your hat on. And especially, I'm really obsessed with architecture of pieces and architectural in general. So I love this idea of like, okay, so this happens for 3 minutes, and then there's 90 seconds of this other thing. And I love that idea of the structure, the larger structure of the works. And I mean, on one hand, that's intellectually interesting, but whether or not you notice that at all, I still feel like we feel that in the audience. You feel this kind of like musical journey of the best songs, and whether that's music by Beyonce or Taylor Swift or Beethoven, there is this sense of the inevitability and just how right great music feels, how complete it feels. details, and how when you go to this next section of the piece, it feels like, oh, it's time for that next section. Oh, it's time for the big finale. It's time for the quiet moment. And all of those, that aesthetic journey, as I think we respond to that as humans in a way which is unique and very, very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe a Taylor Swift concert next year.
Maybe,
We'll
who
see.
knows?
You have to keep your eye out for the schedule,
That's
right? All right, adriansymphony.org. If you're coming in from out of town, remember to go to visitlenawee.com. There's really close lodging options close to campus, and you can check out a slew of things to do in the area, where to eat, where to stay, all that good stuff. So thanks again, Bruce. Hopefully we can catch you next year. I know you're very busy, but we're looking forward to finishing out the rest of the season and seeing what you have up your sleeve for next year.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.